We know nature impacts the fossils, man impacts the fossils. This casting project is to protect them, to get a mold of them that can be saved for all time. And if there's further damage from the ocean, well, at least we have what they were like at this time.
There are many reasons to have a duplicate of this surface because of its priceless value to science and the problems we have with erosion and the quality of preservation here and the number of fossils. We're losing both of those.
You cannot walk on this surface without stepping on fossils. There are more ediacaran fossils, these early experiments of life at Mistaken Point, than in the sum collection of every museum collection on Earth.
Welcome to the edge of Avalon. Possessing a rich history dating back to the earliest explorations of the New World, home to the Cape Race Lighthouse since 1856, base of one of the first Marconi wireless stations in Newfoundland, first recipient of the distress calls from the Titanic, and Mistaken Point, which had a very different kind of legacy before the discovery that would change it forever.
Mistaken Point got its name because of the shipwrecks of the area. Boats were coming to our area and had meant to go around Cape Race, turned inland after passing Mistaken Point, thinking they had gone around the Cape and then wrecked. And so, therefore, comes the name Mistaken Point. We were looking around for the most important attractions, something that would help improve the economy of the area. And we knew we had two very important sites, the Cape Race Light Station and Mistaken Point fossil site.
In 1967, a graduate student from Memorial University and a field assistant doing geological mapping of the area discovered at Mistaken Point a rich collection of imprints of soft-bodied organisms. Fossils of the oldest complex life forms yet seen, over 500 million years old. Since 1998, Professor Guy Narbonne of Queen's University has been involved in a continuous long-term study of the Mistaken Point Reserve.
And mostly the fossil record is the story of shells and bones. But here at Mistaken Point, we don't have these. They had not yet evolved. And instead, what we're looking at are the impressions of the outsides of the creatures that lived here 565 million years ago.
There's no other surface like it of this age in the world. It's completely unique because here you have the greatest abundance and diversity of large, complex, early organisms in the world. And we have the best example of this deep sea community, the first major deep sea community in the history of life on Earth. And Mistaken Point is where life first got big.
Mistaken Point is a veritable treasure trove of ancient creatures. The east surface alone contains over 4,000 fossils, representing at least 15 different species, most of them examples of groups extinct in our modern world. The reserve as a whole contains at least 20 different species.
Mistaken Point is critical for several reasons. One is the best example of what deep water early life looked like anywhere in the world. It's a way that animals started to develop and then that became extinct some 10 to 15 million years later.
All the life forms found at the fossil bed at Mistaken Point were part of a community that lived at what was then the bottom of the ocean and existed thousands of miles further south, off the coast of what is now South America.
So the organisms that you see here are mostly at the bottom of the sea at the time. They were preserved through layers of ashes, and they are fairly simple. You see basically disc-like shape with root-like structures and stems, and you have exceptional preservation of these fossils in 3 dimensions, on bedding plants, and you have a lot of them.
The creatures here died where they lived when they were covered catastrophically by beds of volcanic ash. Everything is exactly as it lived in life. So when you look at the cast of this surface in a museum, what you're seeing is a representation of what the actual sea bottom looked like.
The fossil surfaces were once flat seabeds on the bottom of the ocean. Over hundreds of millions of years, these surfaces have been pushed up and tilted to extreme angles by the same plate tectonic forces that brought together the separate pieces of the Earth's crust that now form the landmass known as Newfoundland.
The way these rocks have been dated is by extracting zircons from the volcanic ash. And within them, you find uranium. That radioactive uranium has decayed to lead. So you measure the amount of uranium and the amount of lead, and using that knowledge, you can calculate the age of these rocks. So we know these deep sea floors were 565 million years old.
The discovery of the fossils brought more and more visitors to the site, scientists as well as the public. To protect the main fossil locations from this increased traffic, the provincial government established a small area of coastline as the Mistaken Point Ecological Reserve in 1987. With more fossils being discovered outside the reserve's boundaries, the reserve area was expanded further in 2009. However, the rate of fossil loss is suspected to be substantially greater than the rate new fossils are being uncovered. Erosion from weather and ocean waves, human activity on the site, even vandalism and theft, all pose threats to the fossils on the site.
And when you look at fossils here, you can see that they're becoming extremely worn, almost to the point of being unrecognizable.
To preserve and study the fossil bed in the past, small casts were made of selected portions of the surface. Now, the Newfoundland and Labrador Department of Environment and Conservation, the Royal Ontario Museum, Oxford University, Queen's University, and the Johnson Geocentre are collaborating on an ambitious project to create a cast of the entire surface, over 900 square feet.
And I've made literally hundreds of casts of this surface. The biggest one would be about the size of 2 sheets of paper taped together. This is a cast that covers the whole surface.
This is a sample of the cast that they're now making at Mistaken Point. But it's so clear and it's done in such detail that anybody looking at it would almost think they're on Mistaken Point.
Preparing the surface is an intensive process. The many cracks and holes in the surface need to be filled with potting soil so that the latex used for casting doesn't expand into those holes and break off pieces of rock when it's peeled off later.
The site itself is endangered, and the leading edge of the fossil assemblage there is crumbling. So what we're doing right now is taking an impression that'll last forever.
And we're using RTV silicone rubber, and we're painting it on the fossils, and we're going to be taking a mold off that and casting it. So yeah, we're just mixing it and painting it on, and we're going for about 3 layers of this. And we start off with a thin layer, and we'll do probably 2 thick layers on top of that just to reinforce it.
The Newfoundland and Labrador Department of Environment and Conservation manages 18 ecological reserves and 2 wilderness reserves, and Mistaken Point is one of 3 fossil ecological reserves that we have in the province. Well, the casting project is a good example of our mandate in action, is to protect the reserve's fossils, to facilitate scientific research, and to educate the public, and the casting project serves all 3.
We take the utmost care to preserve that fossil, and the RTV that we've been using for years and years, and it does not leave a trace behind. And when we take the rubber off, it's pristine. It's like the rubber was never there on the fossil to begin with. And we're well experienced in this field, and we take the utmost care to make sure the fossil is as pristine as it was when we came in.
study of the fossil bed has been limited until now by many factors. The proximity to the ocean, unpredictable weather, and the remoteness of the location. Having a replica of the surface in a controlled environment will hopefully solve all these problems.
Maybe find some new fossils, because the scientists will have a lot more time. Instead of coming out here in the field in the summer for 2 or 3 weeks, they'll have these specimens in their labs forever.
Darwin would be ecstatic. Darwin devoted an entire chapter in The Origin of Species to the question of why is there no animal life before the Cambrian? The absence of Precambrian animals is a critical problem to his view of the origin of species by natural selection. And here we're surrounded by thousands of the fossils that Darwin would have predicted.
It isn't only the scientific community that benefits from the riches to be found on Mistaken Point. Maintaining and protecting the site will yield many returns for researchers and provide a memorable experience for other visitors.
Right here on our doorstep, we have something so unique. We have such a natural wonder of the world, and that so many people from all around the world, scientists particularly, and also once the ordinary person hears, he or she wants to come and see them as well. And to think a little tiny community that had nothing particular special about it at one time has such a wonderful natural phenomenon to offer the world.